Brianna Wu said we shouldn't vote for progressives anymore after she spent a decade as a progressive leader. She was like an organizer. She did some organizing. Leader, I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by the term leader, as in she led organizations. Yes. But I don't know if she would be particularly known as like the face of the progressive movement or anything and something like that. She'd be known as a progressive. She would have been known as a progressive person. But she certainly was an organizer. You 100% have to give her that. But she says no more voting for progressives. And I wanted to hear why, in this moment, why we should not be voting for progressives, ever. Not in any context. Which, if she said, look, you know, if there's options, you should consider. But she says not at all, period. Let's hear it.
So I spent a decade as a leader in the progressive movement, and I want to try to convince you, if you're a Democrat, never to vote or donate money to a progressive candidate ever again. And let me tell you why. So when I first got attracted to progressivism, there was one issue that clued me into.
By the way, I'm supposed to be the key demographic for this. I'm just going to throw that out there right now. I'm a Yankee Doodle dandy, right? Who isn't like, you know, ashamed to call himself an American or whatever. I don't wrap myself in any tanky or like hammer and sickle memorabilia. I have no interest in that. And parading around a corpse, you know, look at my failed system, please accept it now. Soviet Union war. Of course, the majority of American socialists, you probably call them democratic socialists, of a different style of socialists. They might call themselves back to, you know, the Farmer Labor Party or different movements. But like that style, which people point to the most and say, look, these are unpalatable. Like, yeah, I find it unpalatable, right? But that isn't a progressive. You know, progressive covers a large swath of the movement. I mean, Ayanna Pressley would be considered a progressive. She is not some Marxist, Maoist, whatever. You could say Elizabeth Warren is a progressive. Bernie Sanders is a progressive. There are many outside of just the brand names that you know that'd be considered progressive. Jamie Raskin would probably meet the standards of being a progressive. So when you say something like this over such a large swath, I mean, you're really like, good luck. Good luck. I mean, but again, I'm supposed to be the one, you know, that I can appeal to. Oh, come on, there's some crazies on the left. Yeah, I acknowledge there's some crazies on the left. I just don't see how we make this jump that we never vote for a progressive. If you say don't vote for a crazy progressive, okay. I don't think you should vote for crazy people, period. But she just said progressive. So just lining out what the discussion is here.
Vote or donate money to a progressive candidate ever again. And let me tell you why. So when I first got attracted to progressivism, there was one issue that clued me into it. It was healthcare. You know, I was this young 20-something kid just trying to make my way in the world, and the insane cost of healthcare really did not seem fair to me. We were talking about policies like single-payer healthcare, you know, these things that just seemed to make sense. It would address the cost curves. But we're looking at the movement a decade later, and can I really ask you, when is the last time you heard a progressive talking about healthcare?
I mean, Jamie Raskin, Bernie Sanders, he was in Texas. No, he was in West Virginia. And he did a fucking fantastic job appealing to Trumpers as a progressive. Let's look this up right now. I mean, what a weird thing. Healthcare is like the issue where, you know, the progressives do talk about it. I don't know what she would mean by this. I mean, there's certain progressives who don't talk about healthcare, who choose to just go like, I'm only going to talk about the fat button cultural issues for a lot of views. But like the biggest name, the most well-known progressive in the country, Bernie Sanders, he was with More Perfect Union literally like 2 weeks ago, trying to talk to West Virginians about the need for everybody to have health care in this country. Let me show you this. This is a great video, by the way. Watch the full thing. My family was involved in the founding of the capital of West Virginia. I have a lot of family ties to West Virginia. I love West Virginia. I love those mountains. So this video like really connected to me. So maybe that's why I particularly remember this. But Bernie Sanders sat down with a bunch of conservatives at dinner, Trump supporters, Trump voters at dinner, and talk to them about issues that matter to them, including healthcare, on an individual basis.
So we followed up with some of his voters over biscuits and coffee to find out what that's all about.
I would have been nervous with a lot of different, like, celebrities or politicians, but you just seem so normal. Like, you're like obviously just like a normal human.
Yeah, and I'm waiting for the damn breakfast there. I'm starving.
We already ate.
I would love to take an inventory of just personal politics in the last couple of years. Can we start off with that?
You're gonna start with me.
Yeah, we'll start with you. Yeah.
So staged. Okay, numb nuts. They sat down and they set up a camera. It's staged in the way that they put a camera up and that they're filming people. It's staged as in the fact that they set up the interview. What do you mean so staged? Do you think Bernie Sanders just barged into a random biscuit house and was like, I want to talk to Trump voters? Yeah, no, they found Trump voters who were willing to talk to Bernie. Of course, because they're talking to Bernie.
I am independent, but I lean conservative. I not as much anymore as I used to, but I did vote for Trump. But I did post on my Facebook page, instead of I voted, I put I vomited because I didn't want to, but I didn't,
Yeah.
It is what it is.
I voted Republican. I agree with some things of Trump, but most I do not right now.
Right.
I do not, no.
And John, what's that like for you?
Well, this is my first time voting because I was just turned 18 right before I was able to vote. So I voted for Trump, but I'm primarily a Democrat.
Okay.
What the fuck does that mean? Sorry, even at the time when I heard that, I shouted. I was like, what does that mean? What? What do you mean? I mean, look, West Virginia has got weird old Democrat roots. Talk about Byrd, you're talking about whoever, right? So maybe it's a it's a family thing, but either way. But look, if you listen to Bernie and what he talks about here, I don't know if it's later or here. We'll just listen to the whole thing. This video is great. Not the whole video, but what Bernie says.
Senator, who'd you vote for?
It wasn't Trump. Let me throw out a question.
Yeah.
You are living, shock of all shocks, in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Do you feel that down here?
By the way, can I just throw out there, Mom Donnie, who I know Brianna Wu doesn't like, and is probably one of these progressives that she would probably say not to vote for, whether or not she doesn't like his position on Gaza, right? He talked about economic issues. He talked about housing. He talked about affordability. That's how he won. Talking about those issues of affordability. Not because he went down there and was like, okay, everybody, what's a demisexual? Do. Let's explain the gender binary and how it is inaccurate. No, that's not what he did. He went down there and he talked about affordability. He talked about rent prices. He talked about grocery prices. He talked about issues that mattered to the people locally in New York, and he won. He won against a much more established name in Andrew Cuomo, and he's going to beat Andrew Cuomo, Eric Adams, and the Republican candidate Silva, likely in the general as well. And it's not because he comes off with the aesthetics of progressivism or because he can perfectly dodge the cancel culture and meet the purity test. It's because he spoke to issues that people wanted, and he came from a position of critiquing the authority, critiquing those in power, and people found it genuine. On top of the fact that he's a really good media machine.
We're not surviving. We just had our food bank yesterday. We usually pack for 80 people. We served 102 yesterday. It is getting worse. Nobody's surviving right now.
My husband works at the hospital, and there are several ODs every single day.
Only a town of 6,000.
Yeah, we're not a big town.
Several ODs every day?
Oh, yeah.
Let me ask you this, and you may not know the answer, nobody does, because again, this is not just the West Virginia issue. We got it terrible in Vermont. So why are people doing drugs?
That's a great question, by the way, to connect to people who, in a community that has drug problems. It's not like just ask why are people here doing it? Like where is the source of the consumption before how we deal with the treatment for users?
In my thing that I see, because I work a lot in addiction, is it's meant.
Post Collapse just said, fat people going on about surviving. Is this real? Oh no, we can't get enough food because we have all the drugs to take. Man, You ever wish addiction on someone else? I haven't. I just did, but I haven't before. They're obese. They can't be poor. They're obese. They can't have their kids going through food scare. By the way, if you're poor and you go for the cheaper, unhealthier options, that's still a food problem. That's still a problem with nutrition. That's both can be the problem of the parent and not having enough health knowledge, and can be the problem of what's available, what amount of money they have. And if you're just going to say food scarcity isn't a problem in the United States, there isn't people who can't get a full meal, you're just uneducated and sheltered. I'm sorry. There are people who go to school hungry, and there are families that thank the Lord for the school because the school can feed their kids a meal every day and it saves them money. And if they weren't there, they would just go hungry at lunchtime.
Mental health issues.
It's what?
Mental health issues. Lack of jobs. Poverty. Lack of support for our veterans.
Do you find many veterans doing drugs?
Oh, yes. And homeless. And that irritates me. They stood up. They fought for our country. And we can't even afford.
Like, how quick is it? You're just in your mind, oh, that person's fat. They're not a person. Ha ha. That's how quick in your mind you just completely like, this person's suffering does not matter. Go look in a mirror for a bit, or go call your mom. Maybe she needs to set you straight.
To give them housing.
I always wondered, how did so many drugs get into this state? Do we have thoughts about that? How did so many, yeah.
The doctor's pushing it.
Talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, my mother was an addict, and that's how she got addicted. She had a back injury. The doctor kept prescribing medicine. Eventually, that medicine didn't work, and she had to start doing the harder stuff. Sadly, she passed away from a drug overdose. So, I mean, I understand the addiction part of it.
Yeah.
And it's hard to fight. And addiction just doesn't affect the person that's doing it. It affects the whole family.
Now let's go down to where Bernie talked healthcare. I'm just showing more of this because I like this interact. I think this is good politics from Bernie. But here is Bernie talking about healthcare later.
Access to food assistance because of this bill.
So in this bill, Trump's big, beautiful bill, why do you think they cut Medicaid? To save government money so that, what?
They can give tax to their donors.
Exactly. It's not only $1 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1%, it's a huge tax break to large corporations as well.
So why do they need to have a tax break?
All right.
I
Now
use
you're
a tax
asking
break.
me-
I mean, I'm being real. I know I pay like 26% taxes. Like, I could use that money.
Look, these people on top are not nice people. They want more and more. They don't have $1 million. That's chump change.
Yeah.
And we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars in some case.
When you live here, it feels like a poor country.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
I mean, when you say we're the wealthiest, like you said that several times yesterday, and I was like, is it true though? Because like,
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
In aggregate, that's what, look, if we're sitting here and I'm worth $1 billion and all of you are broke, you add it all together and divide it, we're very wealthy, right? We're all worth $100 million. But I got $1 billion and you got nothing. That's America. And if I say that I think the United States should do what every other major country on earth does, guarantee health care to all people as a human right, are you going to think I'm a communist and a terrible person?
I think if people listen, if you talk the way that you did, and you're so reasonable, like they've painted you in a bad light, and it actually makes me very angry because, you know, you see things and you believe it. I'll just be honest, I haven't really seen you talk before. I haven't really I don't follow politics that much. And so the last couple days before this, I started watching some of your speeches and I started watching your interviews, and I was shocked. I was like, oh.
Not as bad as they had told you, huh?
This is not how he's portrayed in the media, right?
Bernie Sanders' campaign. I mean, the reason I went out there and canvassed for Bernie, the whole reason Bernie attracted me is because I know how much my mother needed health care. I know how much people in my family needed health care. Health care was an important issue to us. And Bernie spoke to it from giving me a vision that I thought, you know, we should be able to uphold as the wealthiest nation. That everybody can see a doctor and they will not be left bankrupt by the medical bills that in many instances have nothing to do with conscious decision. Like people think, oh, if you live a bad life, then you become unhealthy. Huntington's disease, you know, if you inherit that as a youth, like if you inherited that, that's not something. What could you have done differently if you inherit Huntington's disease? What do you do differently if you just catch cancer, right? Oh, maybe you could limit certain types of behavior. Well, some people smoke the whole life, never catch cancer. Somebody never smokes and they'll catch cancer like that. Bernie spoke to that so much. That was the centerpiece of his 2016 campaign, and he took it into the 2020 campaign. And there was no chance for a 2024 campaign where some progressive, the center progressive, could make that the center of their campaign. But when she says, when's the last time you heard a progressive talk about healthcare? It was the center of the campaign in 2016 and was still a major part of his campaign in 2020.
Is an immoral.
So the last time there was a
corrupt,
Democratic primary,
bankrupt man.
the last 2 times there was a Democratic primary, the main person talking about healthcare on the stage was Bernie Sanders. And that's how he went from a nobody to a somebody on the political stage in this country, being known by everybody almost overnight. So when she says, when's the last time you heard a progressive talk about healthcare? Where have you been for the last decade? Where have you been? I mean, I remember there being a conversation about Medicare for all and whether there should be a vote, whether we should force a vote. And that was a big talk in the progressive movement, whether or not we should force a vote on healthcare just to have the conversation. I thought it was a bad idea. Maybe Brianna Wu was in favor of forced to vote just to have the conversation. I have no clue. I don't know her take on that. I thought it was a waste of resources and time, but I do think we should still have the conversation. I think you don't waste the resources, have the conversation anyway. If she wants to point out specific progressives, fine. But for the progressives that are respected and are elected and are the most well-known progressives in the country, whether it's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, whether it's Bernie Sanders, these 2 people, the most well-known progressives in the country, constantly talk healthcare. Maybe they don't talk Medicare for all specifically because they're not running for president right now on that platform, but they do talk healthcare quite frequently. For Bernie, it's like a dialogue tree. So I just don't buy that.
Like, the truth is, the movement has devolved into a bunch of fairly radical identity politics as well as Palestine. And I want to be really clear here. You know, my position is I don't think women or Black people or LGBT people always get a fair shake in the United States. But my problem is with the progressive movement, they've inverted this hierarchy of oppression. You're constantly fighting about who is the most oppressed because that person gets to speak. You know, it's not a formula to have a successful operation.
Look, there are some groups and circles that, for example, we don't clap, we snap. You know, we don't know clapping, we only snap here. Or, they're going to go out there and they're gonna, put every single sociological term they can in a sentence to see how they can bore or annoy everybody who rolls their eyes and doesn't buy into just hyperactivist dialogue. But you know what you do if you're in a room like that and you don't see any good work getting done and they're wasting their time? You leave, right? Brianna Wu has said, I give up on the movement. I give up. Progressivism is lost. Let's go back to the center. Let's go back to the middle. Hello, Nancy Pelosi. You are satisfactory, right? I don't agree with that. Because the critiques that led to Trump winning comes a lot of times from those people who are the ones shouting down even the silly activists, right? What you could do is look at the rooms where they're getting nothing done and they're wasting times crying to HR or complaining about their compatriots, trying to one-up each other. They're personal egomaniacs. They need to make everything about them. These are problems, by the way, not just in leftist spaces. Or progressive spaces, or even spaces in the Democratic Party. This is even a problem on sections of the right. But the idea that because of that, we now need to abandon the label of progressive, abandon, the progressive movement, and run where? Go where? I mean, I don't know why we need to abandon the term progressive. I mean, like, if I can understand, like, if she was saying, the leftist, but she says the progressive movement. With the progressive movement, I mean, leftist movement, a lot of these words, people use them pretty differently or interchangeably. But Elizabeth Warren is a progressive. Should I not vote for Elizabeth Warren if it's Elizabeth Warren and Donald Trump? Should I not vote for Elizabeth Warren if it's Elizabeth Warren and Eric Adams? what is a progressive, and where does this line draw? Because if it's just, oh, they just talk too much about identity politics and they don't talk enough about healthcare, well, then every single leading progressive that I can think of in Congress, like, doesn't really meet the standard. They either do talk about healthcare or they don't talk about identity politics that much. Bernie didn't, for sure. I remember him getting shouted down during 2016 by some two, I'm going to be honest, loser activists who took to the stage and wanted to make it all about them and not about the campaign, not about getting, Bernie elected, not about, it didn't fix anything, it didn't do anything. They got the stage, it got everyone's attention, and then they wasted it. In those moments, the critique isn't, oh, let's abandon progressivism. It's throw him off the stage. That's the critique, okay? Get him out of the stage. We have a campaign to win. So why not, if she wants to make a video, say the progressives should, operate seriously. And then she could say something about, we can't wrap the language of identity in all of our branding. Our branding should be universally appealing. We should try to universally appeal with a lot of our branding. And we should speak to certain communities and we can speak to their interests, but, we shouldn't be sectioning off our language so only certain crowds will listen. I can see something in the fog here, but she basically just raised the white flag. I surrender to progressive movement. I was here for 10 years. I give up. Okay.
Tell you as someone that,
as for Palestine, why is that a problem? It's one thing if you're just if you're going and disturbing a random dinner just to yell Palestine or something, some stereotypical image of the hyperactivists in your head. But the majority of Americans are horrified as to what's going on in Gaza. Why shouldn't there be a position for that? Why can't there be a position that acknowledges that? A position that there has to be a Palestinian state. There must be a Palestinian state if this is to end. Outside of course, talking about regional security and what needs to happen to stop another war like this from happening. But why is that? Of course that's in the progressive movement. When was that not in the progressive movement? 10 years ago, it was still a progressive position. Is it just because it's more widely accepted?
it's not a formula to have a successful operation. I can tell you as someone that worked there for a decade and saw candidate after candidate fail, project after project fail. The reason was the unprofessionalism that happens behind the scenes.
Okay, but that's not unique for progressivism. In fact, that's everywhere. There's unprofessionalism anywhere. And it's more rampant in certain areas. That could maybe even highlight that, we might even have a higher ceiling if we can just clean up the act.
At some point, you're going to have to work with a white guy. That's just the way the world works. And if you're constantly trying to tear them down and shut them up and run them out of the organization, and every single other person that's not exactly like you, it's just not a mature workplace.
I've never experienced being run out due to my skin color from any progressive group. Never. No, there was no racial quota when I joined DSA. I don't know what DSA is like now. DSA is a little silly at times. Its position on Ukraine is pathetic and limp-wristed, but I wasn't ever ran out of any organization for being white. I can't, not when I was canvassing for Bernie, not when I was, doing any union stuff. I can't think of that. Maybe I wasn't going to the leftist groups that she talks about, but if there's an organization that's not going to take you seriously because you're not white, because you're white or you're whatever race, then it's an organization that's never going to succeed. Leave it alone. Go join one that's serious. And don't tell me that there isn't progressive groups that won't respect you if you're a white man. Stop playing the victim. If they exist, they are out there, okay? And the ones that don't, they will fail, and that will be it. And that's how it should work. The weak fail, the strong survive. Rawr.
What I would say to you is this toxic attitude you see on social media is exactly how they behave behind the scenes. As the Democratic Party is trying to find a new way forward in the Trump era, I would posit to you that progressivism is not the thing that's going to save us. It's a radical set of policies the American people don't agree with, and also they just can't act like adults.
Okay, well, if progressivism is just black people are better than white people and infighting, well then yes, I don't believe we should make a racial pyramid and say black people at the top, then Mexicans, then Chinese. No, I don't. I don't think we should do that. I don't think the Democratic Party has considered that. I don't think they. No. I think that we should have more racially ambiguous language when it comes to speaking to people's needs, but that also means we should not cower away when we see something like institutional racism. That doesn't mean that you need to, like, I don't know, treat black. I don't know what she's talking about here. What leftist organizations he's talking about, like they're all they're all the black Israelites in the Democratic Party, and they're fucking talking about how Yaqub made the white man. As for like the other thing about professionalism, I mean, yeah, I'll acknowledge that's a problem. Professionalism in progressive environments. But there's also a problem with professionalism in much of the right. There's problems with professionalism, even with some of the Democratic Central Committees all across this country. But yeah, it can be an intense problem on the left. But that's why you would need more adults in the room. And what Brianna Wu has basically said is, I give up. I'm leaving. I mean, there's other things that are motivating her to leave. I'm pretty sure her position on Israel-Palestine is something that she's probably come to the conclusion is maybe irreconcilable to large parts of or even probably a majority of the progressive movement. So, maybe, being boxed out in that way might be a problem. Maybe it's that she isn't particularly beloved in progressive spaces. I mean, most progressives that I know, when Brianna Wu is mentioned, Brianna Wu is not being mentioned in a positive context. So, I mean, I think this could possibly be attuned by both that reputation that she's built, and you could say fairly or unfairly. I don't pay enough attention to Brianna Wu to say, honestly. All I know is that she's relatively pro-Israel, right? Either way, I think that this is a huge jump. A huge jump to say that the movement should be abandoned. Start from scratch, 2016, 2020. I mean, we were that close to the presidency both times when it comes to, Bernie Sanders being the nominee. But whatever. Let's start from scratch. We didn't talk about healthcare enough with Bernie. We didn't talk about healthcare enough with progressives. We should talk about healthcare more. So should the whole Democratic Party. This wouldn't even just be an issue for the progressive left. This would be an issue for the entirety of the Democratic Party. Healthcare should be a big talker. I mean, but let's talk about Kamala Harris's campaign. Why did we lose in 2014? Did we lose because she didn't take a progressive position on healthcare? Or did maybe not having a bold enough position might have been the problem? Or did we lose because she didn't take a progressive position on housing? Or was it that her tax credit option for new home buyers did not really click with a large portion of the public who are not first-time home buyers, don't have the resources to buy a home in the first place? So, or already have a home, So maybe what lost isn't so simple as, we need to go away from the progressive way. I think that it's a mismatch, I don't think that progressive aesthetics necessarily is the best place to the best place to advertise yourself to many people and say West Virginia or Virginia or either of the Virginias or maybe Georgia. There might be areas where progressive aesthetics as they are known, might not be the way to go. But when it comes to progressive policies on healthcare, when it comes to progressive policies, when it comes to making sure that every child goes to school, is fed, and that school lunches are free, like these types of policies are widely popular. It was widely popular, the idea that everybody in this country should have health care. I mean, it even got to the point where Joe Biden in 2020 adopted a public option. He moved more to the left on healthcare in part due to the efforts of progressives that got them gains. We see Eric Adams and Mr. Grabby and Silwa chasing after Mamdani to try to get a millimeter of the authenticity that irradiates off of his messaging, and off of the policies that he put forward that got him the primary victory. Slapping fannies and killing grannies. My gosh, Andrew Cuomo. What a quote from Silwa. Anyway, my point is, I think that Brianna Wu, she has boxed herself out of the progressive movement, or at least a large part of the progressive movement, but that doesn't mean the rest of us need to be boxed out of the progressive movement. Doesn't mean the progressive movement doesn't talk about things like healthcare. I don't really even know where that came from on her side. Maybe that's just what's appearing in her For You feed. Or maybe it's because she's listening to like online groupings, or maybe this behind the scenes stuff that I was not privy to. Either way, though, I don't think we abandoned the progress we made. I don't think we abandoned the progressive movement. And I don't think she made a good enough case for us to never vote for progressive, which was her position. Not, hey, I think the progressive movement has problems, and so I'm going to kind of distance myself from it. It was never vote for one. She didn't clarify it at all. Under this definition, I mean, okay, if it's Marco Rubio and AOC, who do we vote for under this framing? If it is Mike Pence and I don't know, like just some other who are we supposed to be voting for? Like, there are plenty of progressives that deserve it. Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders. They're progressives that if you are of the progressive politics that they brought people to movement in, you would have full reason to vote for. If somebody's in Vermont, should they vote for Bernie? Is this just to get attention? Is this just like I'm saying this in the most hyperbolic way possible to get people to pay attention to what I'm saying? Because it feels like that. Because I doubt Brianna Wu could defend somebody not saying, I will not vote for Bernie. I will not vote for Ayanna Pressley against the Republican. I will not vote for AOC against the Republican. I will not vote for these progressive candidates against the Republican. Look, I mean, it's not that there's nothing there, but any good point has been completely diluted by her statement that all of them, no progressives. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's not like all these progressive candidates that she supported or worked on the campaigns of just disappeared. What is this supposed to say? Anybody that Brianna ever campaigned for isn't worth our vote? What does that say about Brianna's judgment? It's just a statement that on its face just falls flat first. Just gone. Anyway, I hope she reconsiders this, or at least clarifies. Oh, no, actually, I meant you can vote for progressives. And when I said should never, what I really meant is should maybe 60% of the time, but, you know, we need to change the movement. Like, okay, yeah, now add the nuance. But still, nuance would be better. Best to act with prudence. Isn't that a critique for the left? Holy crap, dude. Dude.